You wake up to a kind of silence the world doesn't really offer anymore. Not silence like emptiness, but the kind that's full of presence. A hum, a whisper, a soft breath of the world before it's loud. The light comes in slow through the curtains like it knows not to rush you. There's no phone to check, no buzzing or blinking, no need to scroll. Just the soft awareness of morning. You're still under warm covers. The sheets smell like soap and sunlight. Someone has already gotten up. You'll hear a floorboard creak, the low sound of the kettle warming on the stove. There's toast in the air. That smell, bread and butter. It makes you feel safe, even now. You stay there a moment longer, letting it wrap around you. The quiet, the comfort. You stretch, but not because you have to move, because it feels good to, because there's no place else to be yet. The air is cool, not cold, just enough to make you pull the blanket back for one last moment. Back then, the morning wasn't a checklist. It wasn't a race. It was a beginning, soft and wide like the sky before sunrise. You slip your feet into socks that don't match, and no one cares. You pull a sweater over your head, a little stretched, a little too long in the sleeves, but it's yours. It smells like you, like last week's walk, like home. In the kitchen, someone is humming, not performing, just humming. A tune that's lived in them so long it comes out like breathing. The kettle lets out a puff. The toast pops up. There are 2 mugs on the counter, like maybe one is for you. Not because they expect you, but because they always leave one there, just in case. You sit without speaking. The chair creaks a little like it remembers you. The table's got scratches from the years. You know every one of them. There's a window. You look out. The sky is gray or maybe blue or maybe somewhere in between. There's a bird on the wire, a cat walking the fence, a world that moves slow. You used to wake up to this, not just the scene, but the feeling. You weren't rushing to get dressed, to check in, to catch up. The day came to you, gently, and it waited. Because life wasn't always about doing more. Sometimes it was just about being there. You'll finish your tea, the warmth of it rests in your chest, and for a while, you just sit, not thinking about what's next, not needing anything to happen, just being. Software still, safe, because that's how mornings used to be. And maybe, in moments like this, they still can be. There was a time when the world felt small, not in a limiting way, but in the way that made everything feel close, familiar, safe. The street where you grew up wasn't just a road, it was the road. The one where your bike tires left dusty lines, where your laughter bounced off driveways, where your name was known, not online, but by voice, by face, by heart. Every crack in the sidewalk had a story. You'd jump over them like they were lava, balance on the edge like it was a tightrope. Chalk drawings would fade into the pavement, sons, hearts, maybe your name next to someone else's, surrounded by a big, crooked square. You knew every neighbor by their routine. The old man who watered his flowers twice a day, the lady who always waved from her porch, the dog who barked too much, but only because it wanted to play. You didn't have to plan to play. No messages, no group chats. You just knocked or yelled a name toward the backyard, and suddenly you weren't alone. Shoes untied, shirts untucked, knees bruised, games that had no real rules, only a rhythm you all understood. Tag, hide and seek, collecting sticks like they were treasures. Time stretched out. Summer afternoons that never seemed to end. Golden light that turned everything into a memory while it was still happening. You didn't know that yet. You just knew you didn't want to go inside. And when someone's mom called out, "Dinner time," you'd groan, not because you were hungry, but because it meant the magic had to pause. But even that felt good, because tomorrow it would all start again. Sometimes you walked that street alone, kicking a pebble all the way home, not bored, just with yourself, thinking or not thinking, just being. And then there were the sounds. A distant lawn mower, a screen door slamming, the faint music of someone's radio drifting through an open window. It wasn't noise, it was a lullaby for the day. As dusk came, the street shifted, cooler, softer. The pavement held the sun's warmth under your feet. Bugs started singing, and slowly lights flickered on inside the homes. You knew which houses had yellow light, which ones smelled like garlic and onions cooking, which windows you could peek through just enough to see people not watching screens, but talking, being. And then came the streetlights, the quiet announcement, the day is closing. You weren't told to come home, you just knew. The light told you, the air told you. You walked back slowly, past the same mailbox you always touched, past the tree that leaned just a little to the left, past the crack in the sidewalk shaped like a lightning bolt. That street, it knew you, and you knew it, like the rhythm of your own breath. Back then, the world was small enough to hold. You didn't need to go anywhere to find wonder. It was already under your feet. You remember the mornings before school, not the rush we know now, but the slow, steady rhythm of small rituals, a bowl of cereal, a lunchbox snapped shut, shoes that never quite stayed tied. Back then, your backpack felt too big for your back, but your dreams were even bigger. You walked to school with friends or alone, but either way, the journey mattered. Every crack in the pavement was a landmark. Every mailbox was a marker. There was a smell to those mornings, a mix of early dew, distant toast, and the faint whiff of new paper in your notebooks. Your classroom was small, but it held whole worlds, maps that hung like secret invitations, desks carved with quiet histories. You knew where to sit, how the window light would land across your page. The teacher's voice wasn't always exciting, but there was something soothing in its steadiness. The sound of chalk tapping gently on the board, the slow shuffle of papers. You passed notes sometimes, tiny folded secrets passed like treasure maps, and you waited for recess like it was freedom itself. The bell rang, and suddenly the world burst open, a rush of sneakers, shouting, tag, laughter. It was pure joy, untamed. Your hands got dirty, your hair messed up. And no one took pictures because the moment was enough. At lunch, you traded cookies like currency. Someone always had something better, but you didn't mind, because what mattered most wasn't the snack, but the sitting together, the shared space. Sometimes after lunch, the classroom felt slow again. Sunlight came through the blinds in soft stripes. The air grew warm. You doodle in the margins of your worksheet, your thoughts drifting far from math and deep into imagination. You watched the clock, not because you were bored, but because the day had its rhythm. And you liked knowing what came next, the way everything had a time and place. And when it was finally time to go, you zipped up your bag and stepped out into the air again. back into a world that still felt full of magic. Home wasn't far, and neither were the people who knew you best. School ended, but the day didn't. There were still hours to play, shows to watch, homework that didn't feel like a weight, and skies that turned orange as they tucked the sun away. Those school days, they weren't perfect, but they were yours. Simple, predictable in the best way, safe, and somehow they still live in you whenever the world moves too fast. Summer didn't used to be planned. It just arrived one morning, bright and unbothered. The kind of day that smelled like freshly cut grass and sunscreen from last year. You'd wake up without an alarm, no urgency, no schedule, just the soft weight of the heat pressing on the curtains, and the distant sound of sprinklers ticking like gentle clocks. You'd sit on the porch with a slice of watermelon, juice dripping down your wrist, sticky fingers wiped on your shorts, and it was fine because it was summer. Shoes were optional, so were rules. You could roam barefoot and bold, feet dusted with dry earth, finding adventures in places adults forgot to look. There was a rhythm to the day, slow and wide. Time didn't rush. It lingered like the warm breeze through open windows. You'd lie on the grass, staring at clouds, naming each one like it was a creature passing through. The sky was never boring, just vast, and you had time to notice it. Sometimes you'd ride your bike with no destination, just the joy of motion, the wind against your arms, the click-click of the chain like a lullaby for the road. You'd stop to watch ants carry crumbs, or lie on a sidewalk and feel its sun-warmed surface, eyes half closed, heart wide open. When it got too hot, you'd find shade under trees, behind fences, or inside with a fan spinning slow. It'd sound a steady comfort. And maybe you'd watch an old movie, not for the plot, but for the feeling. That strange piece of someone else's world moving quietly. Later, you'd go back out. Evening would bring the golden light, the kind that makes everything look softer. Friends would gather, sometimes saying nothing at all, just existing near each other. There might be lemonade, a popsicle, a radio playing a song that made you feel like life had no edge. And when the day ended, you didn't feel tired. You felt full, like even doing nothing had meant something. Those summers didn't ask for much. They just gave. And you, without knowing, let them shape you gently. There was a sacred hush in the kitchen, not silence. No, it was alive. But the kind of quiet filled with clinking, humming, and love thick in the air. Your grandmother, or someone like her, moved through it like a dance, hands knowing without measuring, eyes soft but focused. She never rushed. She didn't need to. Time bent for her. The kitchen smelled like stories. Bread baking, soup bubbling, a little too much cinnamon, and just enough salt. Smells that wrapped around you like arms. You'd sit at the table, legs dangling, watching her stir, slice, fold. Everything she touched became something better. There was always something on the stove, something slow, like the food knew it needed time to become what it was meant to be. You might sneak a bite, a fingertip dipped in batter, a corner of warm bread before dinner, and she'd smile, not scold, because the kitchen wasn't just for rules, it was for life. The table wasn't just furniture, it was an altar of connection. You shared stories there, learned secrets in the way she pinched dough or smoothed icing. No need for lectures, just time, together. Sometimes there was music, low and sweet, or maybe just the rhythm of a spoon against a bowl, the scrape of a chair, the soft sigh of the oven door. Even cleaning up felt gentle. The towel over your shoulder, the warm water, the clatter of dishes, and the smell of soap and steam. And when it was all done, you sat again. Tea in a chipped mug, a cookie or two, and silence, the kind that held you, not emptied you. That kitchen wasn't big, but it held the world, and in its warmth, you felt like you belonged, fully, quietly, always. Sometimes the most comforting sound is none, not silence exactly, but the kind of quiet that hums with presence. A fan turning slow, the soft creak of the house settling, a bird somewhere in the distance calling to no one in particular. You'd lie in your bed, staring at the ceiling, watching light shift on the walls, and nothing needed to happen. You weren't behind. You weren't late. You simply were. Maybe it was a rainy afternoon, the kind where everything dimmed and softened. Raindrops pattered against the glass, steady and forgiving. Like the sky knew you needed a rest. You didn't check the time. You didn't check your phone. There wasn't one. There didn't need to be. The day moved like a cat, slow, stretching, silent. You followed it, barefoot, curious, but never in a hurry. Even your thoughts came slower and kinder. You remembered something funny from years ago. You thought about nothing for long stretches, and it felt good. The world today talks loud, but back then there was space between things, space to hear your own breath, to feel your heartbeat, to notice the dust dancing in sunlight. The sound of nothing isn't empty. It's rich, it's soft, it's yours. And sometimes, when you slow down enough, you can still hear it. The car was packed to the brim, blankets, snacks in a crinkling grocery bag, a cooler that squeaked every time it shifted. You weren't headed anywhere grand, but it felt like a voyage, an expedition, even if it was just 2 towns over. You claimed your spot in the back seat like it was a throne, window down, elbow out, hair whipping in the wind, the seatbelt pressed across your chest, but you barely noticed, because the world was sliding past outside, trees, clouds, gas stations that looked exactly like the last, and inside, the car became its own little world. You played games, counted license plates, sang badly to old songs on the radio. Your parents had rules, but they softened on road trips. Candy before lunch? Fine. Shoes off? Go ahead. Nap curled sideways like a cat? Why not? Sometimes you'd stop at a rest area, one of those strange in-between places. You'd stretch your legs, peek into vending machines, maybe get a souvenir from a spinning rack. Back on the road, you watched the sky change, from blue to gold to something softer. And all the while, your destination felt like a mystery, even if you'd been there before. At the motel, because it was always a motel, you'd bounce on the bed, fight over the remote, eat pizza from the box. You might swim in the pool, chlorine and laughter and wet towels everywhere, or fall asleep with the faint hum of the AC and your parents whispering about tomorrow's plans. And in the morning, there'd be a strange joy in breakfast cereal in a tiny box, juice in a plastic cup, and one more day of just being away. Those trips weren't perfect. Someone always got cranky. Something was always forgotten. But they were magical anyway, because it wasn't about the place. It was about the being together, the pause, the break from normal, and somehow those little trips lasted longer than time should have allowed. They stretched out in memory like a ribbon, full of color, twists, and a soft kind of joy you never quite outgrow. Before every pocket held a glowing world, nights were something else entirely. They were slower, softer, filled with tiny rituals that stitched the day to a close. You didn't scroll to fall asleep. You drifted, letting your thoughts wander gently, like fog settling over a quiet field. Maybe you sat on the floor with a flashlight and a book, or lay back and listened to the ticking of a clock in another room. Maybe there was a radio playing, a low hum of voices or late-night music, and the house felt safe, even in the dark. Bedrooms weren't lit by blue light, just a lamp, a nightlight. The soft glow from the hallway where someone else still moved about, washing dishes, turning off the last light. You'd tuck in your sheets, or maybe leave one foot out. The pillow was cool at first, then warm and perfect, and you'd stare at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift like slow dancers. No buzzing, no dings, just quiet, just the gentle rhythm of breathing. Yours, the house's, maybe a pet curled at your feet, and if your thoughts wandered, they wandered gently. To a toy you left on the floor, to tomorrow's field trip, to that one kid who was funny or strange or maybe both. You'd hear the wind sometimes, or the hum of crickets, or the low engine of a car passing down the road, just one. Then silence again. And if you couldn't sleep right away, that was okay. No pressure, no productivity. You were allowed to just be. Maybe you whispered to yourself, told stories in your mind, invented characters, adventures, dreamlands you'd never visit again. The bed creaked just a little as you shifted. You curled up, and slowly, sleep found you. Not because you chased it, but because you were ready. Nights like that, without screens, without noise, they weren't boring. They were peaceful. They were full of space, full of you. We all hold pieces of it, a box in the attic, a sweater with a smell, a photo curled at the corners, songs we can't play without closing our eyes. The past isn't loud anymore, but it's here, woven into our voices, our habits, our pauses before we answer. Sometimes we go looking for it. Old videotapes, toys at the thrift store that feel like old friends, a neighborhood walk that somehow knows our name. Sometimes it just shows up in a smell, a taste, a corner of a room that looks like another place, another time. We miss it. Of course we do. Not because everything was perfect, but because we remember the feeling of being smaller, of life being simpler, of someone always knowing what to do, even if that someone wasn't us. And the past, it doesn't ask for attention. It just waits quietly, soft and patient, ready to remind us of who we were when things moved slower. The trick is, hold it gently. Don't chase it. Don't live in it. Just let it come sit beside you sometimes. Let it remind you that you've lived, that you've loved, that you've laughed so hard your stomach hurt, and cried in the back seat of a car when you didn't understand why. The past made you, but it doesn't own you. You can visit it like an old friend, not with sadness, but with warmth. A quiet nod, a soft smile, a whisper, "Thank you." And then gently, you return to now, with all those moments tucked safely inside you. There was a time when being bored wasn't a crisis. It was an invitation. You'd lie on your stomach on the carpet, head in your hands, staring at the ceiling, and you just existed. No screens, no pings, no algorithm to rescue you, just you. Your thoughts, your toys, the window, the soft tick of time passing. Sometimes boredom felt like nothing. Sometimes it turned into everything. Maybe you grabbed an old shoebox and filled it with pebbles, or drew a whole world on the back of a cereal box. Maybe you wandered into the backyard and found a stick, and somehow it was a sword, a fishing pole, a magic staff. You invented things, you imagined. You stared at dust floating in the sunlight and wondered how it stayed up. You talked to yourself, or to your pet, or to the cracks in the sidewalk. You folded paper until it was a plane, or a frog, or something nobody else would recognize, but you knew exactly what it was. And somehow, without trying, boredom opened a door to stillness, to slow time, to creativity that had no audience and didn't need one. It taught you patience, that good things sometimes came after long silences, that the mind, given a little quiet, will bloom on its own. Now, boredom gets filled too fast, but back then you let it stretch, let it yawn and settle and take up space, and it gave back more than you realized. You didn't know it, but in those empty hours, you were growing something quiet and sacred. The ability to be with yourself and still feel whole.